Hey, let's go over the activity with the Old English and the Modern English translation. So the first thing is comparing thesauras and when they're good as opposed to not good thesauras. So look at the first one here. Then the demon began to spew the flames. Well, that makes sense. Why would you put a pause there? You don't really need to. But they have one in the Old English. So when you do it in Modern English, that's not really effective. So that's not a good thesaurus, as opposed to this other one here, to burn bright houses, the gleam of fire rose. Well, that is one image here and another image here. There's a semicolon there. That's the better example of a meaningful thesaurus. So when you have a thesaurus, you really should have one part of the line and then another part of the line. The next thing you were supposed to have done is highlight the two beats on both sides of the thesaurus. So I went through and I did that ahead of time, and you'll notice that they're syllables. They're not words. That's the biggest mistake people make when they're trying to figure out the meter, is you've got to find the beat that is more heavily pronounced, or the syllable that's more heavily pronounced, and then you'll fall into a meter or a pattern. Now in Shakespeare's time, and even before that in Middle English that we're going to be looking at in a couple of weeks, they use iambic pentameter, where that is regular pattern of unstressed and stressed, but soft but light through yonder window breaks. That is because of the influence of Latin, which is a lot more sing-songy and flowy. But in Old English, which is Germanic, if you think of German, it's a lot punchier and guttural, and that's how the Old English works. So there's an irregular pattern, but you can still hear some of those punchier syllables. So look at this. Then the demon began to spew flames, to burn bright houses, the gleam of fire rose. Now I'm forcing it, and there's no one way you have to do it. In iambic pentameter, it's so much more obvious. But here you can see, to the horror of the men, nor there anything alive, the hateful air flyer wished to leave. The war strength of that worm was wildly seen. The malice of the darkly cunning one near and far. Look how clunky that is. The malice of the darkly cunning one near and far. How the war scather the people of the gates, hated and humiliated, back to his hoard he shot. The hidden Lord Hall ere the time of day, the inhabitants of the land had been seized by flame. In blaze and in fire his barrow he trusted. Now that actually sounds pretty good. That was fairly regular. His war skill and his walls, him this belief deceived. So you could hear where it's punch, 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 punch. I'm not expecting you to be able to do that over here and pronounce that. But if we do it in the modern, it works in the Old English. What you were to then have done was find all the alliterations. So I'm going to pause this and throw them in there and start it back up again. So give me a sec. Okay, there we did it. So I went through and I did the alliteration, and let me take another color here. So over on this side, you can see the alliteration if you just look at the similar letters, right? So you got the G's, you got the B's. Here you have vowels. Technically that's assonants, and then here you've got the L's. Here you got the W's, N's, G's, H's, D's, L's, B's, and W's. So now over here, you got G's on this side. You don't have any G's. So that translation is not very close to the original. You've got B's here. Well, you got burn and bright. So you got that going on. And you look over here, B-R-Y-N-E, Bryna, Bryna. So that might have something to do with burning. Or here's another one. B, the A-E, that's called an ash. And it sounds like hat, cat. So Barnen, Barnen, burn, burn, burn. So that's probably the burning right there. So we found that. You've got some vowels over here. You do have anything alive. L's. We got nothing here. But look, L-Y-F-T. Lift. Lift. And it's air. So the air lifts up. And when you take a lift, like an Uber, right? So that whole thing of like moving, the movement, lift. Oops, that's my phone. That was my daughter to tell me that she went into my house to get her Uggs for tonight because it's cold. Anyway, sorry about that. Let me turn off my ringer there. Yeah, so where were we? Oh, the lift and how lift and air flyer. I have a feeling that that's actually related there. This is the one that I think is pretty cool. All the W's here, and look at the W's here, right? And was, thousa, wormes, wig, wilde, gesen or something, right? So you've got war and worm, worm and worm. W-I-R, wormus, wormus, and worm. So there's, we found this connection between modern English and Old English. Widely seen, W-I-D-E, wide, wide, and widely, right? So that's a pretty neat one. We've got N's here, and you have near, and N-E-A-R, and N-E-A-R, that may be the same. You got some G's here, you got the gates here, and gata, so you got something going on there. That's a nice translation there. But look, there's a G over here, but there's no G here. So it's the proper noun. So you got the proper noun here, and you got the proper noun here. H, H, H. H, H, H. Check it out. That's a decent one. So you could have highlighted this one. Going right along with this one. And hatode and hated. Horde and horde. That's a decent translation. Got D's here. And you got a D here. Day. Dagus. That may be a correlation there. LL. You have land. That doesn't really work. BBB. You have blaze and barrow. That's not too bad. So you could have maybe found this. And then this one here, you got a W and a W over on this side, but you don't have the W over on this side. So, I know that was probably not the most interesting thing for you to watch and follow along, but if you do something like that, you're able to at least appreciate what was going on in that Old English form, how sometimes you can see some of that in modern English, but many times not. It is a distant cousin, Old English, as opposed to modern English. But you can see some of the influence. And now maybe you understand why reading Beowulf, a translation, you lose so much of the original intent. That's why we didn't read the original. Well, first of all, you can't, and even the translation, you miss so much. However, as different as the language is, they just made a movie out of it a couple of years ago, and that's what personally I think is so interesting, that as so different the language is, taking the story, focusing on a lot of the similarities, adding a little differences for Hollywood to match our standards of what we think is a good story, it still works. So we are taking things from over 1,000 years ago, and it's still relevant today. Hope you appreciated what I found and what I was able to share with you, and this will help you, because what you're going to be doing is taking this form and actually writing something using modern English, but with the Old English form. That's going to be your task, and I hope you have fun doing it. I hope this video helped, and yeah, have fun. Thanks a lot. Bye.